Imagine pushing a machine to its absolute limit, where one tiny mistake means disaster, yet that's exactly where you need to be to win. Today, we're diving into the fascinating world of Formula One and what it teaches us about operating at the edge of chaos. You'll learn why peak performance lives in this dangerous sweet spot, how teams navigate it, and why this matters far beyond the racetrack.
And what's really interesting is that this isn't about thrill-seeking or reckless behavior. It's about finding that precise boundary where performance peaks but hasn't yet collapsed into chaos.
So help me understand, what exactly makes Formula One such a perfect laboratory for studying this edge of chaos concept?
Well, Formula One compresses everything that matters about peak performance into split-second decisions. You've got these incredible constraints, regulations on engines, aerodynamics, budgets, and you can't pause or simplify anything. The feedback is immediate, and the consequences are real.
And there's no room for error, right?
Exactly. But here's what's fascinating. The best drivers aren't actually trying to avoid errors completely. They're deliberately pushing to the edge to find where that limit actually is.
Wait, so they're intentionally getting close to making mistakes?
Yes, but in a very controlled way. Think of it like this. The driver isn't just a pilot. They're more like a sophisticated sensing instrument for the entire team.
That's such an interesting way to think about it. Can you explain what you mean?
When a driver pushes close to the edge, they're gathering crucial information that no simulation could ever provide. Every small loss of traction, every moment of instability, that's valuable data for the team.
So risk isn't just about spectacle, it's actually about learning?
Exactly. And you know what's really interesting? This same pattern shows up in completely different fields, like startup leadership.
Really? How so?
Well, think about founders navigating a disruptive market. They're also operating with incomplete information, making high-stakes decisions where the consequences are very real.
But isn't there a big difference between racing and running a company?
The context is different, but the underlying pattern is remarkably similar. In both cases, you're trying to find that sweet spot between control and chaos where real learning happens.
Let's talk about that sweet spot. How do you know when you're there?
It's when feedback is fast and meaningful, but you haven't lost the ability to respond. The moment you can no longer learn from what's happening, you've gone too far.
That makes me think about comfort zones. Is this why staying comfortable can actually hold us back?
Absolutely. In comfort zones, feedback is weak and learning is slow. Nothing really challenges your assumptions.
But you're not advocating for constant crisis either, right?
No, definitely not. Living in crisis is just as problematic as never leaving comfort. The key is being able to approach the edge deliberately, learn what you need to learn, and then step back.
You mentioned F1 teams earlier. How do they manage this as a group?
That's where it gets really interesting. The team functions like a nervous system, filtering and amplifying signals from the driver and translating them into adjustments.
So it's not just about individual performance?
Not at all. Individual heroics actually become less important than the team's ability to learn and adapt together.
That's fascinating. What happens when teams don't work well together in these situations?
They either miss important signals or overreact to minor ones. Without good team coordination, operating at the edge becomes much more dangerous.
Let's talk about fear. How does that play into all this?
That's such an important question. Fear is always present in these situations. The goal isn't to eliminate it, but to contain it so it doesn't spread and paralyze the team.
So being fearless isn't actually the goal?
No, and this is a crucial point. Fearlessness can be dangerous. What you want is the ability to stay regulated and make good decisions while experiencing fear.
That's really different from how we usually talk about high-performance situations.
Exactly. And you know what's interesting? In F1, the most telling moments aren't actually on the straightaways, they're in the turns.
Why is that?
Because turns are where everything gets tested. You've got partial traction, limited visibility, competing forces. It's where you really discover what holds under pressure.
And I imagine that's where the real learning happens?
Precisely. The straightaway rewards raw power, but the turns reveal everything about your system's true capabilities.
Let's talk about resilience. How does operating at the edge build that?
Well, here's what's fascinating. Resilience isn't actually built after the challenging moment. It's built during it.
That's not how we usually think about it, right?
No, we often think resilience comes from reflection after the fact. But the real learning happens while you're still under pressure, if you can stay regulated enough to absorb it.
And this compounds over time?
Exactly. Each exposure to the edge, if handled well, makes the next one more manageable. What once felt overwhelming becomes navigable.
That reminds me, you mentioned startups earlier. How do founders use this?
Well, founders often face what we call near-death moments, situations where the stakes are existential and there's no clear path forward.
That sounds incredibly stressful.
It is, but here's what's interesting. These moments often create what we call forced clarity. All the noise falls away and you can suddenly see exactly what matters.
So crisis can actually help in some ways?
Yes, but only if you can stay regulated enough to learn from it. If you panic, you miss the signal entirely.
How do you build that ability to stay regulated?
It's about repeated, intentional exposure to edge conditions, followed by reflection and integration. You can't build this capability in comfort.
But you also mentioned earlier that living in crisis isn't the answer.
Right, it's about finding a rhythm, approaching the edge when necessary, learning what you need to learn, then stepping back to integrate.
That makes me think about recovery. How important is that?
Crucial. Without good recovery practices, teams can't sustain performance at the edge. They either burn out or start making dangerous mistakes.
So what's the key takeaway for listeners who want to apply this?
Build systems that let you stay sane under strain. Clear decision rights, tight feedback loops, and explicit practices for recovery.
And this applies beyond just high-stakes situations?
Absolutely. Anytime you need to learn or perform under pressure, these principles become relevant.
What about the human cost? These situations can be really tough on people.
That's such an important point. This isn't about glorifying risk or crisis. It's about being responsible and conscious when you have to operate in these conditions.
And having the wisdom to know when not to push?
Exactly. Knowing when to pull back is just as important as knowing how to push forward.
As we wrap up, what's the one thing you hope people remember from this conversation?
That operating at the edge isn't about being fearless or reckless. It's about staying present and learning while under pressure, and doing so responsibly.
That really changes how we think about high performance, doesn't it?
It does. And once you understand this pattern, you start seeing it everywhere, in sports, business, even personal growth.
Well, this has been incredibly insightful. Thank you for helping us understand how to navigate that crucial edge between comfort and chaos.
Thank you. And remember, the goal isn't to live at the edge, it's to be able to operate there effectively when necessary.